Hello, I'm Sarah and thanks for joining me. In this video I'm sharing how I decided what to grow this year in the context of trying to grow more and buy less. Let's get straight to it and start by looking at my first consideration, which was the space I have. Although my garden isn't small, it's not all dedicated to growing veggies, but if I needed extra space, I could probably find somewhere for a few extras. So this obviously does give me a bit of freedom to experiment. I also considered the type of growing space I have and what it's suitable for, whether I'm growing in the ground or raised beds, plastic tubs or pots. Some veggies prefer to be in the ground, but historically I found that my leafy greens and my salads seem to be happy in tubs. So I've kept that in mind when I've chosen my seeds, thinking about where they would go. I also thought about how much of something I needed to grow to provide a decent number of portions and therefore the space that quantity of plants would need. This is totally new for me, and I'm sure already I don't have enough of certain crops or even enough space, but I'm telling myself that's okay. This is a skill that I hope I will develop over time. Finally, on space, I've kept in mind where my seedlings are going to hang out before they can grow on in the greenhouse. And because I'm growing more, I've definitely got more seedlings. My house has a south-facing front and a north back, and I have a conservatory on the back, which I've been using for seedlings while they're waiting to germinate, because there is a radiator in there. It's definitely not as warm as the house, but it is warmer than the greenhouse would be. I have put things on the windowsills in the south-facing part of the house that have needed more heat. And then I do have the south-facing porch, so what I'm doing is once the seeds have germinated and they're a decent size, then they are going into the porch, which doesn't have a radiator, but it is still attached to the house. So the hope is that it is definitely warmer in the porch than it would be in the greenhouse, and they are getting some south-facing sun. So the next area of consideration was time, and this is an area that I have to be honest with myself about. This year I do have more time dedicated to the garden than previous years, but for the last 18 months my garden has been pretty much neglected. So I have lots of work to do in the garden as a whole, not just in relation to growing veggies. So I do need to be realistic with myself. I have set myself this challenge to grow in larger quantities this year, growing more and buying less. So I need to be really productive with my time. In the past, the thing I have found the hardest by far is finding time for the consistent watering and the monitoring of the plants or seeds. Those daily, more routine tasks, I can definitely get seeds sown and the plants in the ground, because I tend to plan time in to do that, because I will dedicate an hour or so for that to get done. But remembering or having time or being bothered to go outside and water after or before work is way more of a challenge for me. So already this year I've noticed the daily watering and checking is taking up more time than usual because I have more seedlings to look after. I need my garden to be a place of abundance when it comes to food, but it's also got to be a calm place and a resource for relaxation for me. So I must be realistic with my time this year. So moving on to what I'm growing, the first thing I did was I asked my family what they would like to have in the garden, and then I thought about the things that we buy weekly from the supermarket and just wrote a quick list on my phone. I then went through that list and culled anything that didn't fit into the time and space that I had available. Here are all the seeds I'm hoping to grow in various quantities. I'll mention a few in detail. And at the top we've got onions, French beans, tomatoes, celery, spring onions and broccoli. Then we've got lettuces, loads of basil for pesto, spinach and rocket, and then leeks, calendula, because I'd like to maybe make some sort of soap or some kind of healing balm maybe with calendula, and then kale and carrots. So those are the things that I want to grow as much of as I can. And then this section here, from the cauliflower down to the radish, these are the things that I will grow, but perhaps not in huge quantities, or I don't necessarily need a lot of them. I've never grown beetroot before, but I hear it's very delicious, so that's one of the reasons that I'm growing that. Peppers, we do like peppers, but we don't eat loads of peppers. Marigolds, because they're just pretty. And then parsnips, they obviously take forever, so I don't know, I'm a bit umming and ahhing about that one, but we do eat parsnips weekly in the winter. Chives we eat quite a lot of during the summer. And then this section here, this is the stuff that I'm not going to grow that much of. The flowers are really just to look pretty. I've never grown a squash before. I couldn't find this spaghetti squash anywhere else. I got it on Amazon. So I have no idea. There are no instructions on how to sow it. So wish me luck with that one. Chamomile, I'd like to grow it for teas. Dill, I can't even remember when I've ever used it in a recipe, but I got the seed packet, so I'm going to try. Parsley, don't eat a ton of it, but it's that kind of herb that's always handy to have around. So I have already sown some, which I can show you. Thyme, which I've also already sown, and aubergine. I don't eat aubergine, but on occasion. Something else that I'm really keen to learn a bit more about are herbs, not just from a health perspective and a cooking perspective, but a preservation as well. How do I store them? I already have a very happy rosemary and bay tree, and a slightly wild sage, and a returning oregano. These herbs feature really heavily in our cooking, so I need to make sure I have a continuous supply of those basically. The other section is kind of your fruits, which is the raspberries and strawberries, which I eat a ton of. So I'm really hoping that I can preserve those. My raspberry plants are new this year, so I don't think I'm going to get a great crop from them this year, so I'm going to have to be patient. And finally, the equipment. So I'm keeping it as simple as possible. I have bought this new seed or soil compost trough, I suppose you call it, for mixing my compost, and this soil sieve, which I haven't used before. Because I don't buy seed compost, I just thought this sieve might help get rid of those larger pieces of bark. Before I had the trough though, I just used a Tupperware box with a lid, and I would mix up my compost and then I would just keep it in the Tupperware with a lid on. So that worked perfectly well. I use a bamboo offcut for making my holes, or I'll just use my finger. And then I have some seed cell trays. I definitely need some more of these because I'm close to running out at the moment, but I am looking into that. I have bought these trays from the Charles Dowding selection, and they are really good, particularly for the salads and the smaller leafy greens, and they are really sturdy. And then I have got these black ones which are great, but they are definitely not as tough, so they are likely to start breaking soon. And then I've also got a selection of pots from plants that I've bought at the garden centre, or that I've picked up outside the garden centre, because they often leave pots out for people to collect. This year I'm also collecting fruit punnets and yoghurt pots and mushroom trays, which I'm hoping just might help me bridge the gap a little and mean that I don't have to buy a ton more seed cell trays. I know I am going to have to invest more. Anyway, I hope you found this helpful. You can make things as complicated or as simple as you want, and for me, I'm learning to balance my thinking and my planning time, which is really important. I need to plan with just getting it done and not overthinking. Nothing bad will happen if I run out of room or time, or we don't eat a crop that I spent my time growing. I might lose some seedlings, but that's about the extent of it. And all of it is going to help me get better next season. I'd love to hear any of your hacks on how to make things easier, cheaper, or more productive. Leave a comment below, and I'll see you in the next one.